I never thought I would be the kind of person to spy on my own wife. But when I listened to the secret recordings, I felt my entire world shatter. The woman I loved, the woman I married, had been hiding something from me for years. And my mother-in-law? She was in on it too. What I discovered changed everything. I never thought I'd be the kind of husband who doubted his own wife. Sophia and I had built a life together. 6 years of marriage, laughter, late-night talks, and shared dreams. I trusted her. I wanted to trust her. But lately something had changed. At first, I convinced myself I was imagining it. After all, she and her mother, Elena, had always spoken in their native language, a beautiful but completely foreign Eastern European dialect. It was a natural part of their relationship, something I had accepted a long time ago. I used to find it endearing, how Sophia would slip effortlessly between English and her mother tongue, how she laughed with Elena in a way that was different from how she laughed with me. But now, that laughter felt different. At first, it was just a feeling, a subtle shift in the air whenever they spoke in front of me. The way their eyes would dart to me, just for a second, before looking away. The hushed tones, the abrupt stops when I entered a room. It was no longer casual conversation. It was whispered secrets. I kept telling myself it was nothing. Maybe they were just talking about family matters, something I wouldn't understand anyway. Maybe I was being paranoid, but the feeling wouldn't go away. The moment that changed everything happened over dinner. It was a normal evening, at least it started that way. We were at the dining table, the three of us, eating pasta and drinking wine. The air was warm with the scent of garlic and basil, the kind of meal that usually made me feel comfortable at home. But then, just as I was taking a sip of my drink, Elena said something to Sophia in their language. It was short, clipped, and I wouldn't have thought anything of it except for how Sophia responded. She glanced at me first before answering her mother in a hushed tone. Elena's reaction was immediate. She burst into laughter, loud, sudden, almost mocking. I stopped mid-bite. My stomach twisted. I didn't understand a word, but I felt the meaning. I looked at Sophia, waiting for an explanation, but she just gave me a small smile, the kind people give when they don't want to explain something. I forced a chuckle. What's so funny? Sophia waved her hand dismissively. Oh, it's nothing. Nothing. The way she said it so casually, like she was brushing away a piece of lint, made my skin crawl. I looked at Elena, but she didn't even try to cover it up. She was still smirking, sipping her wine, eyes flickering between me and Sophia, like she knew something I didn't. For the rest of dinner, I barely touched my food. I just kept replaying that moment, dissecting every second of it. Was I imagining things? Was it really nothing? But if it was just a joke, why not tell me? If it wasn't about me, why did Sophia look at me before answering? That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Sophia's steady breathing beside me. I wanted to forget about it. I wanted to be the kind of husband who could shrug it off and move on. But I couldn't, because it wasn't just that one moment. It was the way their conversations had changed in the last few months. The way they whispered now. The way Elena's eyes lingered on me, like she was sizing me up. I turned my head slightly, watching Sophia sleep. The woman I married, the woman I trusted with my life, was keeping something from me. My gut told me so. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that your gut never lies. I knew I had to do something. I needed to know what they were saying. And that's when the idea hit me. If I couldn't understand them, maybe someone else could. I couldn't shake the feeling, not even after Sophia kissed me goodnight and curled up next to me in bed. My mind was stuck in a loop, replaying the way she and Elena had looked at each other, the way Elena had laughed, the way Sophia dismissed my questions so effortlessly. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it really was nothing. Maybe, just maybe, I was making a problem where there wasn't one. But if that were true, why couldn't I stop thinking about it? I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined them whispering behind my back, speaking in their secret language, keeping me in the dark. My thoughts spiraled until I landed on a single, undeniable truth. I had to know what they were saying. The next morning, as I got out of bed, an idea started forming in my head, one that made me uneasy, but also filled me with a strange kind of resolve. If I couldn't understand their conversations, I'd find someone who could. But first I needed proof. Sophia had the day off, and as usual, Elena was over early. The two of them settled into the kitchen, chatting over coffee while I sat in the living room, pretending to scroll on my phone. My heart pounded as I quietly opened my voice recorder app. I took a deep breath, then stood up, walking casually toward the kitchen. Hey, I'm just going to take a shower, I said, setting my phone on the counter near the fruit bowl. Don't let me forget my phone, okay? Sophia barely glanced at me. Yeah, sure. Elena didn't even look up. Perfect. I walked out of the kitchen, down the hall, and into the bathroom, locking the door behind me. My heart was racing. I wasn't even sure why I felt so nervous. I wasn't doing anything wrong, right? I turned the shower on, just for cover, but I stood by the door listening. Muffled voices filtered through the walls. They were speaking in their language, fast and hushed, as if they didn't want to be overheard. I tried to pick up any familiar words, but there was nothing. After 20 minutes, I turned off the water, dried off, and took my time getting dressed. When I finally made my way back to the kitchen, my stomach twisted. Would my phone still be there? Would they have noticed? But when I walked in, everything was exactly as I had left it. My phone sat on the counter, untouched. They were still deep in conversation, barely acknowledging me as I grabbed my phone and shoved it into my pocket. I wanted to check the recording right away, but I knew I had to be patient. I forced myself to act normal, finishing breakfast and making small talk. But my hands felt clammy. My pulse wouldn't slow. When Elena finally left for the day, I practically sprinted to my office and shut the door. I pulled out my phone, my fingers shaking as I opened the recording. I hit play. At first, it was just the sound of them pouring coffee, the clink of cups against the table. Then, Elena spoke. Her voice was sharp, serious. Sophia responded just as fast, her tone lower, urgent. The conversation grew more intense. I couldn't understand a single word, but I could hear the tension. Then, after a long pause, Sophia said something, and Elena let out a dry chuckle. That laugh, the same one from last night, the one that made my stomach twist. I stopped the recording, my breathing uneven. I needed a translation. I searched online, trying to find a way to get a transcript. Most services took days, but I found a website that offered an express translation if I paid extra. I didn't care about the cost. I uploaded the audio file and hit submit. And then I waited. Minutes crawled by. I refreshed my email at least a dozen times. My palms were sweaty. I tried to distract myself, but nothing worked. The anticipation was unbearable. Then, finally, the notification popped up. Your transcript is ready. I hesitated before opening it. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Maybe something about family drama, gossip about a relative. Something normal. But as my eyes scanned the text, my stomach dropped. It wasn't normal. It wasn't innocent. They were talking about me, not just mentioning me in passing. I was the subject of the conversation. I read the words over and over again, trying to make sense of them. He has no idea. It's better that way. If he ever finds out, everything will fall apart. We have to be careful. What the hell did that mean? Find out what? What would fall apart? I scrolled down, scanning the conversation, desperate for context. You worry too much, Elena had said. He's clueless. He will never suspect a thing. That's what you think, Sophia had replied. But he's been asking questions. He's watching us. My blood ran cold. They knew. They knew I was catching on. I felt like the walls were closing in. My mind raced with 100 possibilities. Was she cheating? Hiding money? Keeping some dark family secret? I had no idea. But one thing was certain. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. And whatever they were hiding from me, it was big. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind circled back to the transcript. He has no idea. It's better that way. If he ever finds out, everything will fall apart. We have to be careful. I couldn't stop replaying those words, trying to make sense of them. What the hell were they hiding? An affair? A secret account? A past she never told me about? I wanted to believe it was something harmless, something I was blowing out of proportion. But deep down, I knew better. People don't talk like that unless they have something to hide. At one point, I turned to look at Sophia, sleeping peacefully beside me, her face calm, unaware of the storm raging in my head. I felt sick. I had spent years building a life with this woman. I thought I knew everything about her. Now, I wasn't even sure if I knew who she really was. When the sun finally crept through the blinds, I gave up on sleep and got out of bed. I needed to know more. One recording wasn't enough. I needed more proof. I spent the morning acting as normal as possible, pretending like nothing had changed. Sophia greeted me with a sleepy smile and kissed me on the cheek, the same way she had every morning for years. It felt hollow now, forced, like I was watching a stranger play the role of my wife. Elena arrived just before noon, carrying a bag of fresh pastries from the bakery down the street. She greeted me cheerfully, the same smug smirk on her face as always. "Good morning, Ethan," she said, her accent thick, her voice dripping with something I couldn't quite place. I forced a smile. "Morning." They settled into the kitchen, chatting as they set up for their usual afternoon tea. This was my chance. While they were busy, I grabbed my phone, set it to record, and slipped it behind the couch in the living room. It was the perfect spot, close enough to pick up their conversation, but hidden enough that they wouldn't see it. I sat with them for a little while, sipping my coffee, trying to keep my hands steady. Every second that passed felt like torture. Were they going to say something? Would they mention me again? Then, just as I was about to excuse myself, Sophia glanced at Elena and switched to their language. I tensed. Elena responded quickly, her voice low. Whatever they were talking about, it was serious. I pretended to check my phone. I have to make a work call, I said, standing up. Sophia barely looked at me. Okay. I left the room, my heart pounding, and walked straight outside, making sure the door shut behind me. Then I waited. For the next 30 minutes, I paced the backyard, hands in my pockets, mind racing. I couldn't hear anything from outside, but I knew they were talking about something important. The way their voices had dropped, the urgency in Sophia's tone, it was the same as last time. When I finally walked back inside, they were still at the table, sipping tea like nothing had happened. I grabbed my phone as casually as I could, pretending to check the time. My stomach twisted when I saw that it had recorded for exactly 32 minutes. I had them. I excused myself to my office and shut the door. My hands were shaking as I transferred the recording to my computer. I uploaded it to the same translation service, paid the rush fee again, and waited. The minutes crawled by. Then finally the email came through. I opened it. At first, it was the usual, small talk, meaningless chatter. But then about 10 minutes in, the tone shifted. Elena, he's acting strange. Sophia, I know. He's watching us now. Elena, we need to be careful. If he finds out about Igor, it will ruin everything. I froze. Igor. Who the hell was Igor? I kept reading, my pulse pounding in my ears. Sophia, I don't know what to do. I can't keep lying to him forever. Elena, you have to. If he finds out, he will never forgive you. My mouth went dry. Sophia was lying to me. About something big. And Igor, whoever he was at the center of it. I scrolled further, my breath catching in my throat. Sophia, I feel guilty. I hate keeping this from him. Elena, then stop feeling guilty. He doesn't need to know. It's better this way. I clenched my fists. They were choosing to keep me in the dark. I sat back in my chair, my heart hammering. My wife was hiding something from me. And not just her. Elena was involved too. And now I had a name. Igor. The question was, who was he? And what was so terrible that knowing about him would ruin everything? I wasn't sure yet, but I was damn sure going to find out. That evening, I sat at the dining table, watching Sophia move around the kitchen, pretending like everything was normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. The weight of what I had discovered sat heavy in my chest, pressing against my ribs like a stone. Every time I looked at her, I heard those words repeating in my mind. If he finds out about Igor, it will ruin everything. He will never forgive you. Sophia hummed softly as she cooked, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. She was good at acting, too good. I had spent 6 years with this woman, and I thought I knew everything about her. But now, she was a stranger who was hiding Igor. I needed answers. I forced myself to keep my voice light. Hey, Sophia, I said, leaning back in my chair. Who's Igor? It was subtle, but I saw it. Her entire body tensed for half a second. Just a flicker of hesitation, a barely there pause as she stirred the sauce on the stove. But that was all I needed. Her hand tightened around the wooden spoon. She didn't turn around. What? I shrugged, keeping my tone casual. Igor. I think I heard you and your mom mention him earlier. Just curious. Who is he? This time she turned. Her face was calm, too calm. But her eyes? Her eyes told a different story. Before she could answer, Elena walked in from the patio, carrying a glass of wine. The moment she heard the name, her entire expression shifted. It was fast, so fast that if I hadn't been watching for it, I would have missed it. The slight widening of her eyes, the tightening of her lips. Then, just as quickly, she plastered on a smile. Oh, Elena said, waving her hand dismissively. Just an old friend from home? But Sophia was still frozen, her face pale. She wasn't expecting me to know that name. I kept my expression neutral, pretending I hadn't just caught them in a lie. Oh yeah, I said, sipping my drink. What kind of friend? Elena's eyes flicked to Sophia, silently telling her to get it together. Sophia swallowed, then forced a weak smile. It's nothing, Ethan. Just someone we knew a long time ago. Lies. I had proof they were lying. If Igor was just an old friend, why did they need to be careful? Why would me knowing about him ruin everything? I felt my pulse pounding in my ears, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed to play this smart. If I pushed too hard, they'd shut down completely. So I smiled, acted like I didn't care. Huh, guess I was just curious. Sophia nodded quickly. Too quickly. Yeah, nothing to be curious about. I let it go. At least I made it seem like I was letting it go. But inside, my mind was spinning. That night, Sophia barely spoke. She kept stealing glances at me, like she was trying to figure out if I suspected anything. And Elena? She wasn't even subtle. Every time she looked at me, it was with thinly veiled caution, like I was a problem that needed to be managed. I went to bed early, pretending to be exhausted. Sophia climbed in next to me an hour later, but I could tell she wasn't asleep. She was lying stiffly, her breathing just a little too controlled. She was waiting to see if I'd bring Igor up again. I didn't. Not yet. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever they were hiding, it was big. I tried to let it go. I really did. But once you hear something like, if he finds out about Igor, it will ruin everything. You can't just ignore it. It eats at you, sinking into your brain like a parasite, whispering questions that won't stop. Who was Igor? What was Sophia hiding? Why did Elena react like that? The more I thought about it, the worse it got. Sophia and I had been together for years, but I had never once heard her mention an Igor. No old classmates, no childhood friends, nothing. And yet, here she was keeping him a secret. So secret that she and her mother whispered about him when they thought I wasn't listening. I told myself I wasn't going to push it right away. I needed more information first. And to get it, I was going to have to do something I never thought I would do. I was going to check Sophia's phone. It made me feel sick just thinking about it. I hated the idea of invading her privacy. I wasn't that kind of husband. I never had been. We trusted each other. That's how a marriage was supposed to work. But this wasn't about trust anymore. This was about the truth. So, I waited. That night, after Sophia finally drifted into sleep, I carefully slipped out of bed. My hands were already clammy, my pulse pounding in my ears. Her phone was charging on the nightstand. I reached for it, barely breathing, and turned it on. Face ID. Damn. I hesitated for a second, then carefully angled the screen toward her sleeping face. The phone unlocked instantly. I swallowed the lump in my throat and started searching. First, I checked her messages. Nothing. Just the usual texts with friends, coworkers, and family. Nothing suspicious, nothing strange. I moved to her emails. Again, nothing. I was about to give up when a thought hit me. Deleted messages. My fingers trembled as I navigated to her recently deleted texts. There weren't many, just a few old conversations that looked unimportant. But then, at the very bottom, I saw it. A thread with an unknown number. My stomach clenched as I clicked on it. Most of the messages had been erased. But one still remained. Igor, it's too risky. He's starting to suspect. I stared at the screen, my breath catching in my throat. My mind started racing. This wasn't just an old friend from home. This wasn't something harmless. Sophia knew I was onto her, and she had warned Igor. I quickly copied the number into my own phone, my hands shaking. Then I locked her screen, placed the phone back on the nightstand, and crawled under the covers, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it would wake her. Whoever Igor was, Sophia was protecting him. And now, I was one step closer to finding out why. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do. In fact, as I lay in bed next to Sophia, listening to her slow, even breathing, I kept trying to talk myself out of it. Checking your spouse's phone was the kind of thing paranoid, insecure people did. The kind of thing that could destroy a marriage. But our marriage was already cracking. Sophia was hiding something. I knew it. And after everything, the secret conversations, the whispers, the way her body stiffened when I mentioned Igor, I had no other choice. She wouldn't tell me the truth, so I had to find it myself. I lay there in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might shake the bed. Just do it. I turned my head slightly, watching Sophia's sleeping face in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. She looked peaceful, innocent, like nothing in the world was wrong. But I knew better now. Taking a deep breath, I carefully reached over to her nightstand, my fingers grazing the cool surface of her phone. My hands were already clammy. One wrong move, and this could all blow up in my face. I picked it up. It didn't wake her. I pressed the side button, and the screen lit up. Face ID required. Shit. I hesitated for half a second, then angled the screen towards Sophia's face. It unlocked instantly. I let out a slow, shaky breath. There was no turning back now. My hands were trembling as I opened her messages, my eyes scanning the list of conversations. I felt disgusting, like I was violating something sacred. But my paranoia was stronger than my guilt. Nothing stood out. Just regular chats with friends, co-workers, family. Nothing about Igor. Nothing suspicious. I moved on to her emails. Again, nothing. I was about to give up when a thought struck me. Deleted messages. My stomach twisted as I navigated to the recently deleted folder. There weren't many conversations there, just a few old messages that didn't seem important. But then, at the very bottom, I saw it. A thread with an unknown number. My fingers hovered over the screen, dread pooling in my stomach. I clicked on it. Most of the messages had been erased, but one still remained. Igor, it's too risky. He's starting to suspect. My breath caught in my throat. My vision blurred for a second, my brain struggling to process what I was looking at. Sophia had texted Igor, and she had warned him about me. I gripped the phone tighter, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. My mind started racing. Who was this man? Why was Sophia keeping him a secret? And why? Why the hell was she trying to protect him from me? I quickly copied the number into my own phone, my hands shaking. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I needed to keep it. Then I locked her screen, placed the phone back on the nightstand exactly how I found it, and rolled onto my side, my body rigid. I lay there for hours, staring into the darkness, unable to sleep. My wife was keeping secrets from me, and now I was one step closer to uncovering the truth. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind reeled with the same thoughts, looping over and over again like a broken record. Igor, it's too risky. He's starting to suspect. That text confirmed everything. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't being paranoid. Sophia was keeping secrets from me, secrets that involved this Igor, and she was scared I'd find out the truth. But who the hell was he? A friend? An ex? A brother? I had no idea, and that was the part that drove me insane. It wasn't just that Sophia was lying. It was that she was lying about something big enough to make her delete messages and whisper in another language with her mother. I spent the next morning going through the motions, forcing myself to act normal. I smiled when I needed to, made conversation when required, but my mind was a million miles away. By the time evening rolled around, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to know who Igor was. So, I started digging. I went through Sophia's social media first. Instagram, Facebook, even her old LinkedIn profile. Nothing. No Igor. Not on her friends list. Not in her comments. Not even in old photos from before we met. I tried different spellings of the name, different variations, but it was like he didn't exist. That only made me more suspicious. Who was so important that she was whispering about him with her mother, but didn't have a single trace of him online? There was only one explanation. She had gone out of her way to erase him. I clenched my jaw, my stomach twisting. Sophia was careful, meticulous even, but she wasn't perfect. Late that night, long after she had gone to sleep, I had an idea. We had a shared computer in the office. Sophia rarely used it, preferring her phone or laptop, but I knew she logged in occasionally. If she had searched for Igor, there was a chance she had left behind something, anything that could tell me who he was. I crept out of bed, moving slowly so I wouldn't wake her. My heart pounded as I made my way down the hall and into the office, the glow of the screen illuminating the darkness as I turned on the computer. I swallowed hard, opened the browser, and went straight to the search history. Most of it was normal. Shopping, news, a few YouTube videos. But then I saw it. An email. I clicked on it, my stomach twisting into knots. It was from a private investigator. The subject line made my breath catch in my throat. How to find someone who's gone missing. My vision blurred for a second. Missing? I clicked into the email thread, scanning the words, my pulse hammering in my ears. Sophia had reached out to a private investigator nearly 6 months ago. The email was short, but the message was clear. I need help finding someone. I don't want to involve the police. Can we talk? The response from the investigator was professional, asking for more details. But there was no reply from Sophia. No follow-up. No additional emails. I scrolled, searching for more. Maybe she had deleted the later messages? Maybe she had met with the investigator in person? But there was nothing. Sophia was looking for someone, and she didn't want anyone, not the police, not even me, to know about it. My mouth went dry as I sat back in the chair. This wasn't just an affair. It wasn't money or something petty. This was something huge, and I was in the middle of it, whether I wanted to be or not. I sat in that chair for what felt like hours, staring at the email thread on our computer screen, trying to make sense of it all. How to find someone who's gone missing. The words burned into my brain like a brand, and no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, I kept circling back to the same question. Who was Igor, and why was Sophia trying to find him in secret? She had reached out to a private investigator months ago, But as far as I could tell, she never followed up. Was she afraid? Did something stop her? Or had she found the answer she was looking for and just never told me? I leaned back in my chair, running a hand through my hair, my pulse hammering in my ears. This wasn't some petty secret. This wasn't an affair. This was something big. I had been so convinced she was hiding Igor from me. But what if I had it all wrong? What if Igor was the one who was missing? The thought made my stomach churn. I shut down the computer and crept back to bed, but I didn't sleep. My mind wouldn't stop racing, tangled up in every possible scenario. By the time the sun rose, I had made up my mind. I couldn't keep pretending like I didn't know. I had to confront Sophia. It was mid-morning when I finally got the chance. Sophia was in the kitchen, making coffee, dressed in an oversized sweater and leggings, her hair tied up in a loose bun. She looked so normal, so calm, like she wasn't carrying a secret big enough to rip our marriage apart. I walked in and leaned against the counter, watching her for a moment before I spoke. "Sophia," I said, my voice careful. "Who's Igor?" The moment the name left my mouth, I saw it. Her entire body tensed, just for a split second. She didn't turn around. She stirred her coffee. "What?" "Igor," I repeated, stepping closer. "You know exactly who I'm talking about." "Who is he?" She let out a forced chuckle, finally turning to face me. "Ethan, seriously? We talked about this. He's just someone from back home." I folded my arms. "So, just an old friend?" She hesitated. "Yeah." "Then why were you talking about him in secret with your mom? Why did I find deleted texts warning him about me? Why did you reach out to a private investigator to find him?" Her face went pale. I saw the moment the lie collapsed in her throat. For the first time in our marriage, I saw a genuine fear in her eyes. Not annoyance, not frustration, actual fear. "Sophia," I pressed, my voice quieter now. "What's going on?" She swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the counter like she needed to hold on to something. "Ethan, please," she whispered. "Let it go." I felt a cold rush of anger. "No," I said, my voice firm. "No more secrets, no more lies. I know something is going on. I know you've been hiding this from me. So tell me the truth. Who is Igor, and why are you looking for him?" Her eyes filled with tears. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me," I shot back. "Because right now, it looks really fucking bad." She wiped at her face, her breath coming in short, uneven bursts. "I wanted to tell you," she said, her voice breaking. "I swear I did, but I couldn't. It was too dangerous." "Dangerous?" My stomach twisted. "Dangerous how?" Sophia looked at me, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I saw guilt. "It's worse than you think," she whispered. "So much worse." I felt the world tilt beneath me. And in that moment, I realized, whatever secret my wife had been keeping from me, I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. I stood there, gripping the counter, my entire world tilting on its axis as Sophia wiped at her tear-streaked face. The words had barely left her lips, but I already felt like I was in freefall. "It's not what you think, Ethan. It's worse. So much worse." I had spent weeks suspecting my wife of lying to me, hiding something dark, an affair, a secret life, a double identity. But nothing could have prepared me for what she was about to say. She inhaled a shaky breath, avoiding my gaze. "Igor isn't some old friend," she whispered. "He's my brother." The world around me seemed to fade. My ears rang. I had spent 6 years with Sophia. 6 years of sharing everything, of believing we knew each other inside and out. And not once had she ever mentioned a brother. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She pressed her hands together like she was bracing for impact. "I wanted to tell you," she said quickly. "I did, but it wasn't safe." "Safe? What the hell does that mean?" My voice came out rough, edged with something I didn't recognize, something between disbelief and anger. "Why would telling your own husband about your brother not be safe?" Sophia swallowed hard. "Because Igor disappeared." My breath caught in my throat. "What?" She nodded slowly, her fingers twisting together. "He went missing almost 10 years ago. No explanation, no warning. Just gone." I shook my head, trying to process. "I don't understand. People don't just disappear." Her lips pressed together. "In my country, they do." A chill crawled up my spine. Sophia's home country had always been a mystery to me. She didn't talk about it much. Just little pieces here and there, childhood memories, old traditions. But it was a place with a complicated history, a place she had left behind with her mother when she was young. I had never questioned why. Until now. I rubbed my face, trying to think. "So, what happened? Did he run away?" She let out a hollow laugh. "If only." She shook her head. "We always believed he was taken. But we never had proof. I exhaled sharply, pacing the kitchen. My mind was spinning in 100 directions at once. Okay, so why the secrecy? Why not go to the police? Her expression darkened. Because the police couldn't help. They didn't want to help. And even if they did, we were warned that asking too many questions would make us the next ones to disappear. I stopped pacing. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just a missing person case. This was something bigger. Something dangerous. You've been looking for him, I said slowly, the realization settling over me. She nodded. My mother and I never stopped. We've been searching for Igor in secret for years. I let out a short, bitter laugh. And you didn't think I deserved to know? Her face crumpled. I wanted to tell you, Ethan. So many times. But we were terrified. We didn't want you involved. Her voice broke. We didn't want you to get hurt. I stared at her, my mind a mess of emotions. Anger, confusion, disbelief. For weeks, I had thought my wife was keeping a secret that would destroy our marriage. And in a way, I had been right. Because even though it wasn't an affair or a double life, it was still a betrayal. Sophia had hidden an entire person from me. For 6 years, she had let me believe I knew everything about her. Her past, her family, her struggles. But she had been carrying something this heavy, this dangerous alone. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or completely shattered. I took a shaky breath and ran a hand through my hair. So, what now? Sophia looked at me, her eyes full of something I couldn't quite place. I don't know, she admitted. But now that you know the truth, I think you have to decide if you want to help me find him. I stared at her, my heart pounding, because I already knew my answer, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for what came next. I sat at the kitchen table, staring down at the stack of papers Sophia had just placed in front of me. My hands felt cold, my pulse steady but slow, like my body was preparing for something it couldn't quite comprehend yet. The papers were old, slightly wrinkled, and some had handwritten notes scribbled in the margins. It was the investigator's report, the one Sophia had kept hidden from me for months. This is everything, she said quietly, standing across from me with her arms wrapped tightly around herself. She looked smaller somehow, like she was bracing for a reaction she wasn't sure she could handle. Everything I know about Igor's disappearance. I swallowed hard and forced myself to pick up the first page. It started off like a basic missing persons case. Igor had vanished nearly 10 years ago, no warning, no goodbye. One day he was there, and the next he wasn't. At first, people assumed he had left on his own, maybe escaped to another country, looking for a better life. But that theory didn't hold up for long. He had left everything behind. His clothes, his documents, his phone. People who run don't leave without a trace. I flipped to the next page, my eyes scanning quickly. The investigator had done his best to track Igor's last known movements. He had been seen at a bar 2 nights before his disappearance, drinking with a group of men. The kind of men people didn't ask questions about. The kind of men people feared. I exhaled sharply, gripping the edge of the table. The next page had photos. Low-quality images, probably from security cameras, showing Igor sitting in a booth, his face partially obscured by shadows. Across from him were 3 men. Their faces weren't clear, but even in the grainy images, they looked rough. The kind of men who carried knives. I glanced up at Sophia. Who are these guys? She hesitated. The investigator wasn't able to confirm their identities, she admitted. But there were rumors that they were involved in something dangerous. My skin prickled. Like what? She swallowed. Organized crime? I felt my stomach twist. This isn't just some missing person case, is it? My voice was quieter now. She shook her head. No. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my hands over my face. This was bigger than I expected, and it explained everything. Sophia hadn't just been keeping a painful family secret. She had been protecting me. That's why she and Elena spoke in whispers, why they switched to their native language when I was around. It wasn't just about hiding the truth. It was about keeping me from digging too deep, from getting involved in something that could destroy me. That's why Elena had laughed at dinner. Not because she was mocking me, but because she saw how dangerously close I had come to the truth, without even realizing it. Jesus Christ, I muttered, staring at the documents. And you thought if I found out, they'd come after me too? Sophia nodded, her eyes glassy. We didn't know if they were still watching, if they were still listening. The paranoia made sense now. The secrecy, the fear. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. So, what do you want to do? I asked. Are you still looking for him? Sophia hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line. I don't know, she admitted. I thought I did. But now, with you involved, she trailed off, shaking her head. I don't want to lose you too, Ethan. I swallowed hard. I had two choices. I could walk away, pretend I never found the report, never heard the name Igor, never realized that my wife had spent years searching for her lost brother. Or I could help her, even if it meant putting myself at risk. I looked back down at the papers, at the grainy photo of a young man sitting with dangerous men, unaware that it might be the last picture ever taken of him. And I already knew my answer. I sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. The papers were still in my hands, but the words had stopped registering. My mind was too busy trying to catch up with reality. I had spent the last few weeks convinced my wife was hiding an affair, that she was lying to me about something that would destroy our marriage. And in a way, I had been right, she was lying. But not about another man, not about money or some secret life. She had been lying to protect me, to keep me from getting tangled in something far bigger, far darker than I had ever imagined. Igor wasn't a friend. He wasn't an ex. He was her brother, and he had been missing for 10 years. My fingers tightened around the report as I exhaled sharply, trying to steady myself. Everything made sense now. The whispers, the secrecy, the paranoia. Sophia and Elena had spent years looking for Igor in the shadows, terrified that asking the wrong person the wrong question might get them noticed. That whoever had taken him, whoever had made him disappear, might still be out there. Sophia stood across from me, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, watching me with swollen, red-rimmed eyes. She had stopped crying, but I could still see the weight of her fear pressing down on her. She was waiting for my answer. I looked at her, my chest tightening. For 6 years, I thought I knew my wife. Now, I wasn't sure if I had ever really known her at all. I glanced back at the report. The last known sighting of Igor. The men he had been seen with. The shadows of something much bigger than just one missing person. I had two choices. I could walk away. I could pretend I never found the deleted messages, never overheard the whispers, never realized that Sophia had spent years searching for someone she thought was lost forever. Or I could stay, even if it meant putting myself at risk. Even if it meant that, for the first time in my life, I was stepping into something I might not be able to get out of. I set the papers down carefully and looked up at my wife. "If you're going to keep looking for him," I said slowly, "then I'm going to help you." Sophia's breath hitched. Her hands flew to her mouth, her whole body trembling as fresh tears welled in her eyes. "No more secrets," I continued. "No more lies. If we do this, we do it together." She let out a choked sob and rushed forward, throwing her arms around me. Her body shook against mine, her grip so tight it almost hurt. "I never wanted to drag you into this," she whispered against my shoulder. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. "But I'm already in it," I murmured. "Aren't I?" She pulled back just enough to look at me, her face wet with tears. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but instead, she just nodded. Because we both knew the truth. There was no walking away from this now. I had spent weeks searching for the truth. I had listened to recordings, checked her phone, gone through her past, all because I thought she was cheating on me. Instead, I had uncovered something far more complicated. A family mystery. A missing brother. A secret buried for a decade. And now, I had a new question to answer. Not who was Igor, but how far was I willing to go to find him?